Kip, what's up, man? It's good to see you. I
Hey,
see, just to piss off the YouTubers, that we do not have matching shirts today. And if you guys are offended by us having a conversation about our matching shirts, then get the hell out of here. I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's
out
pretty
of
crazy what people are upset about.
yeah, I was gonna say, out of all the things I've watched on YouTube, I could probably think of something a little bit more valid to get pissed off about. But yeah,
Well, social media is a very interesting beast. I love it. I love it. I love social media. I actually enjoy being on social media. Um, but sometimes it's just too much. And for those of you who may not know what we're talking about, and why would you? Because we haven't talked about what we're talking about. Somebody on
yeah,
the our YouTube channel the other day was upset that we talked too much about our matching shirts. So, guys, we got bigger fish to fry. We got more important things to worry about.
yeah,
So, in the spirit of the things we have to worry about, let's get to the questions today. How about that?
yeah, for sure. And to check out that comment and to see the amazing YouTube videos, go to youtube.com/order of man. Check us out there. So
That's right.
yeah, so we're fielding questions today from the Facebook group. You can
And next
join
time
us
we'll wear
Facebook.
matching shirts, by the way, just because, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
like if
You
the
know,
right
we want
people
to
are pissed
clarify, we
off, then
didn't
I
do
just want to
this
like
just because
rub
the
that
comment.
in just
Yeah.
for fun. So
Yeah, we're not pandering to that guy.
that's part of the
Yeah.
reason I like social media so much, because, you have these guys that troll other people. They troll me, they troll other people.
Yeah.
Look, I'm just as much of a troll as anybody else. You troll me, I'm going to troll you right back. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know it's petty. I got more important things to do, but what's life if you can't have a little fun with these freaking a-holes every now and
Yeah.
again?
Yeah. And it is a little, I mean, it's interesting if you think about it. Like, I know we don't know people who criticize us, right? And why would you care the opinion of someone you don't know? And I understand that. But in the same breath, like, I do think that generally speaking, because of social media, you get electronic courage being thrown at you that you probably normally wouldn't have ever heard. And it is kind of daunting, right? You know what I mean? Like, if it wasn't for Facebook and YouTube, how often would you have someone in your face kind of criticizing you, speaking illy? Not very
Dude, when I
often,
was a
because
kid,
people don't have the balls to do it, right?
they
So
don't. And I think about when I was a kid, if you had a problem with somebody and you said it to their face, you got in a fight with them.
yeah,
And
you
I
get
got
punched in the face. Yeah.
or you do the punching, like one or
Yeah.
the other. And so when I was a kid, when I was growing up, I was in elementary school, I was in high school, I got into 4 or 5 fights, I think, growing up. Some of them were pushing and shoving matches. Others were like, we were throwing fists,
Yeah.
we were throwing hands at each other. And, and I remember one fight in particular. I think I must have been in eighth grade, seventh or eighth grade.
Yeah.
Uh, and I fought with this kid, and afterwards we're like best friends for
Yeah.
the next year or two. We were inseparable because we earned a level of respect for each other. But you
Yeah.
can't earn respect on social media when you're just flapping your gums and you aren't willing to back anything up. But there's people that I know actually on social media. Well, an example, and I'm going to speak very loosely about this because I don't get into specifics with people, but
Yeah.
somebody I follow on social media had some criticism of one of the things I posted the other day. And
Someone
but
you
the
follow.
difference,
So someone you kind of care
I
about
know,
what they
no,
think.
not even that I follow. Like, I actually
Okay.
know him. We've broken bread
Oh,
together.
okay.
We've shaken hands. Like, we know each other,
Interesting.
and I take that to heart.
Yeah.
If somebody, and he wasn't blasting me. I think there's a difference between just some
Yeah.
constructive criticism and blasting. He
Yeah.
wasn't
Or
doing that,
or voicing a difference of
or
opinion.
just a
Yeah.
disagreement, right?
Yeah.
And so he disagreed, and we had a very civil discussion offline about it. Because we know each other.
Yeah.
And I think there's just a level of knowledge, or a level of respect, or mutual understanding when you actually know somebody and you've seen them face to face. You've looked in their eyes, you've shaken their hand, or you've trained with them, or you've whatever. You've just been together face to face. And that's what's interesting, is the guys that come at me in one form or another. Most of them don't know me, but the guys who give me constructive feedback and criticism, a lot of these guys actually know me. And I take that to heart. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I know this guy. I know his intent is good. I know who he is as an individual. I know he's not a bot. I know he's not just a troll. Like, he actually cares about what we're doing here. And so constructive criticism in that context goes a very long way, but not for those who I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Well, and sometimes guys are just, well, it's hard to read, like I do think I've made a couple posts, I think, where Lex, did like a counter comment, a little bit.
And
And
that's also Lex.
and that's Lex, right? But it's funny because my natural instinct is like, well, don't disagree with me, right? And then I also realized like, yeah, Lex is also like pointing out the obvious of like, hey, this is also like, you can see this from a different angle as well. And everything he said was completely true, but it's kind of interesting. But my natural instinct was like, oh, you disagree with me, like that's a bad thing, So
well, but think about in the context of Lex. So let's talk about Lex a little bit. Like, he's actually a member of the Iron Council. He's been with our organization in one form or the other for the past 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years.
Yeah.
So when he speaks and he talks, I'm like, okay, I better listen to this guy because he's credible. Obviously, he believes in what we're doing because he's vested in what we're doing. He's one of our team leaders in the Iron Council. So if he speaks, I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen a little bit more intently. I'm going to give him, this doesn't sound right, but I'll just say, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it's not even that. It's just like, okay, I respect him.
Value his opinion more than just,
I value his opinion because I know our interests are aligned. And so even though we may disagree about things, I know our interests are aligned. And that is the difference. That's the important thing. But there's another thing here too, is like, sometimes you can get feedback that is either unsolicited or comes from a source that you aren't familiar with. And I really think that we need to ask ourselves, is this true objectively?
Yeah.
Because what you're talking about, Kip, right now is, and I do this too. I'm not pointing fingers at you, but you say, well, don't correct me. Don't challenge me. That's a subjective analysis. An objective analysis says, okay, well, man, that doesn't feel good, but like, regardless of where it comes from, let me ask if it's true. I actually think about this a lot in the context of Donald Trump. So you have these never Trumpers, and I get it because Donald Trump is very abrasive. He's a very unlikable person.
Very easy to criticize, right? Yeah.
And he's very egocentric. Himself. Yeah, he doesn't help himself. Puts his foot in his mouth. Like, is kind of a dunce in that standpoint.
Yeah.
But also, if you get past a lot of that, you really, I think, if you're being intellectually honest, have to ask yourself, okay, well, disregard all the shit that I don't like. Is what he's saying true? And I think in a lot of ways, yes. The answer is yes. I don't have to agree with, right. I don't have to agree with the delivery.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have to agree with his arrogance and his ego, but like, put that aside. And I think that is really important for men, is that we exercise some discernment. That's actually one of the 13 elements of the code of conduct from Sovereignty that I wrote in, I think it was 2017, 18. Can't even remember now, is discernment. Are you capable of discerning? Are you capable of telling right from wrong, regardless of how you might feel about it, or how you might interpret it, or how you might filter it through your lens or your worldview?
Yeah.
Are you capable of discernment? And unfortunately, a lot of people aren't. And so, you can take some criticism from an asshole, for example, and actually some of it might be true. Or you can take criticism from somebody you really trust and just take it to heart blindly because you trust that person, and actually they're wrong. So like, we really have to work on our level of discernment.
Yeah, for sure. You put that ego in check, when necessary.
I guess and I think just like doing like wanting the right thing. I've got a very close friend. I'm not going to disclose who it is right offhand, just because there's some personal information here, but I've got a very close friend I had breakfast with the other day, and he shared some things. And as he was sharing some things, I couldn't help but just be very inspired and just a deeper level of respect for this individual, because their sole purpose is to win. And winning isn't defined by them winning. It's defined by the team and the culture and them winning collectively. Yeah. And so he's willing to let go of his ego. He's willing to let go of some other parts and aspects of life and the business that he runs, because he cares about winning. He cares about serving. He doesn't care about his own fragile ego. And it was a very interesting conversation.
Yeah. Commitment to a desired outcome, right?
Right.
It's
Whatever
good.
it takes. And that might mean stepping up. And that might actually at times mean stepping back. And I think as
Yeah.
men, we need to consider that maybe in certain circumstances, you are the problem. So one of the experiences I had when I was a young man is that when I was a senior in high school, I felt like I was in line to become the starting catcher. I was always behind my friend Wayne McIntosh, who is a friend today. Actually, he's a better friend today than even in high school because we
Was
stayed
he
in
a senior
touch.
with you, or was he a year
He
older?
was a year above me,
Okay.
and
So he was
so
exiting and you're like, hey, I'm
yeah,
next in line here. Yeah.
yeah. So Wayne was he was my idol, man. Like I wanted to be him. I thought he was so cool, and he was such a great. He's still, I mean, he's a great athlete. He's such a great athlete, and I wanted to be that guy.
Yeah.
And then he graduated. I was a junior. He was a senior. He graduated. And then I moved up and I'm like, cool, I'm the next Wayne, and, but I didn't really do what was necessary. I just rested on my laurels and I just kind of felt like I was entitled to this thing. And I remember my baseball coach, which was not necessarily my sport. That was Wayne's sport. Football
Yeah.
was my sport. I was great at football, not great at baseball, average, I would say. And I just thought, well, I'm entitled to this catching position. And my coach, it must have been 3 or 4 games into the season, my coach pulled me, and I was complaining about it and griping and moaning and whatnot about it. Of course I would, right, as a young man. And so I asked my mom about it, and I said, like, I don't get it. I don't understand. She's like, well, like, why are you talking to me? Go talk to your coach. My mom was so good about that.
That's
So I went and
such
talked
great
to my
advice, because
coach.
most parents would be like,
Oh, protect you, and like, oh, he's
yeah,
doing you a
he's wrong.
disservice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
So I went and talked to my coach, Matt Labram. And interestingly enough, Matt's been on the podcast. He's still a friend of mine, 20 plus years later, 22 years later now, 23 years later. So I talked to him and I said, well, you know what? Like, you pulled me, coach. Like, what's going on? And he said, well, Ryan, I told you need to practice. Did you practice? No. Told you need to train in the off season. Did you train in the off season? No. Okay. Well, okay. Your results are so anyways, long story short, he put this, I can't remember, Brandon, he must have been a sophomore or junior in, and he started him at catcher. And I had to make a decision at that point. Do I gripe and moan and bitch and complain and throw a temper tantrum and quit the team, which was an option?
Yeah.
Um, or do I put the team above myself? And I think through the prodding of my coach and the prodding of my mom, I decided to put the team above myself. And instead of starting catcher, which I believed was stripped from me and I deserved it and I was entitled to this position, I decided to put that away, and I helped Brandon. I worked with him during practice. He said, Brandon, you and Ryan go over there, and we'd run drills and we'd practice, and I taught him what I knew. And he was a great asset for the team. And I was too. It wasn't the asset that I thought I would be or that I felt like I deserved.
Yeah.
But I could have very easily just quit and said, well, this sucks, and coach is out to get me. And people did that, by the way. Or I could just put the ego aside and say, okay, what's best for the mission? At that time and place, what was best for the mission is having him catch and me teaching him what I knew to be able to get him to be ready for that position.
How did you get to that, Ryan? Like, did someone provide that clarity for you to say, hey, put the team first, or do you just came to that on your own? I'm just imagining most high school kids probably would have not came to that conclusion, right? They, if anything, they would have buckled down and practiced harder and try to win their spot back. But
well, and I did that too. Hey, look, don't mistake. Don't make any mistakes. Like, I was working too. Like,
I know, but most would not help the other catcher either, right? Like, they're the enemy, right? For most kids. I don't
know. I wish I could answer that question clearly. There are a couple of things come to mind as you say that. I've always been a pretty mature person, even as a kid. My wife and I were talking about it. Her and I went on a date last night.
That's why you have no humor.
That's why I'm not funny, because I've always been an old man. Like, always, even as a 13-year-old kid, I've been an old man.
He's still dad jokes at age 10.
That's right. That's right. No, but like we laugh about it, but it's actually true. It's not even kind of true. It's totally true. I've always been very mature, and I've always felt like I should be, I've always felt like a 35 or 40-year-old man, even at age 13. I didn't like totally understand or get or even relate to a lot of my friends when I was younger. It just wasn't a scene I was totally interested in.
Had to grow up maybe a little bit quicker.
I don't think that. I don't think that.
No?
I don't want to paint myself as a victim. And it wasn't because I was forced to grow up or anything like that. I had a great childhood. I talk about my dad not being in my life, but damn, I had a great childhood. My mom was there. My sister and I got along pretty well about 80% of the time, which is normal. So I had a good childhood, like never worried about where the food was coming up from or the roof overhead or that my mother loved us. I was fairly athletic, really good childhood. So you're asking, where does it come from? I was mature just by default, but my mom, I mean, frankly, it came from my mom. Yeah. She didn't let me pull any of that bullshit. When I complained or griped or moaned or pretended like the world was out.
Just the fact that she told you to go talk to the coach if you had a problem is
that's what I'm saying.
An example of that. Yeah.
Right. So she never let me pull any of that crap. And that is crap. And too many parents do that now. They're like, oh, well, yeah, the coach must hate you. Or alternatively, you suck.
Yeah. They'll pander to it. Yeah.
Nobody likes to hear that. I remember there was kids in high school, and I'm trying not to relive the glory days here, but I think there's a lot of lessons here. But we had some kids on the team who they weren't good. And they would go gripe and moan to their mom and dad. Their mom and dad would complain to the coach. And I can't imagine what that conversation would be like. But like, no, the reason is the coach isn't playing your kid because he doesn't like your kid. It's because you suck and we want to win.
Yeah. Yeah. I have one story because this is a perfect example of this is it was basketball and we had 3 teams that we split up. And of course there's kind of like A, B, and C team. I'm coaching C. The old high school coach stopped coaching high school so he could coach his son on this A team. And there's talk from the boys of like, oh, that A team is all the coach's favorites.
Yeah. Right? Nepotism. And sure.
It's impossible to get in there, right? Because of this established relationship. And that's just kind of what everyone assumed until it was super funny. Midway through a 2-week tryouts, this kid shows up. Parents just moved into town. Dad's a pro baseball player. Kids in 8th grade, this kid's probably like 6'2", runs like he's small, has hops, and you saw that whole story of coach's favorites all went to the wayside. Yeah. Everyone got shifted, right? Because it's like,
well, hey, no, hold on.
Yeah.
I want you to finish your story, but you said coaches' favorites. Like, guys, understand this. Coaches have favorites.
Yeah.
It isn't blood. It's performance.
Really good.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. And coach just got a favorite instantly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it was super funny because I'm like, oh, watch this. And it all just broke apart, right? It's like, all right, these kids are all getting shifted because new kid showed up. And he's talented and he's damn good.
Yeah. Coaches want to win.
Yeah.
Look, I think if there's a lesson that we can extract from this, it's that if you're a father, then let me say this. So I'm in the process of writing a book right now, and that's going to be coming out in 2022. And in Sovereignty, I came up with 13 virtues, or I shouldn't say came up with, but identified 13 virtues that I think would serve you when it comes to leading your life well. In this book, I'm talking about 13 characteristics of masculinity that you need to learn how to harness more effectively to be able to lead with influence, credibility, and authority.
Yeah.
And one of those is ruthless honesty.
Yeah.
You need to be and when I say ruthless, I'm not saying asshole honesty. I'm saying ruthless honesty is in you are fully and completely committed to being honest. There's a tactful way to do it. There's a respectful way to do it. But if you want to garner influence, credibility, and authority with people, then you need to learn to be very, very honest. And part of that honesty, to my mom's credit, is that she never sugarcoated anything. She never protected me where I didn't need protecting. And she allowed other men in my life, mostly through coaching, to come in and say and do what needed to be done. And then she trusted that those those righteous coaches would do what was right, not in the short term, but in the long term. And so we're talking about something that happened over 2 decades ago, and I'm still referring to it. And I'm not lost in my glory days, like how great I am. I'm like, no, I wasn't actually doing what I needed to be doing. And my coaches had enough insight, even though they were young, and they were young, probably early 20s, mid 20s, to realize that this isn't about baseball. This isn't about football. This isn't about wrestling. This is about the next 60 or 70 years. So
yeah, totally. And we're working on, I'm working on a formula for like a winning culture. And one of the guiding principles is open and direct communication. Right. And the idea that it's kind, it's not nice, but it's not mean. Right. Like, and you can do that because it serves that individual substantially better than if you're trying to be nice and skirt around issues. Right. And so many companies end up laying people off and people getting fired and losing their jobs because we are too cowardly to actually communicate what was necessary to help them rise up and do a better job. It's,
and isn't that what that's a great word choice. It's cowardice.
Yeah.
If there's something that needs to be said or shared or communicated and you don't want to do it, Kip, you and I were talking about it actually before we hit the record button on this podcast with some stuff in the Iron Council. Like, you have to do what's right, even though it isn't always comfortable. It's not fun. You have to have some conversations that
totally
you don't really want to have. Like, in an ideal world, you wouldn't have to have that conversation, but anything less is cowardice, and men aren't cowardly by definition. Yeah. Males are, boys are, like my kids. I think about my boys. We're moving them up to the attic this year, but the attic of our house is not insulated.
Yeah.
And it's a little creepy. It's an attic, bro. Like, it's a home that was built over 100 years ago. It's a creepy thing. And my younger sons they're scared of it, right? They're scared because they're cowardly. They're being cowardly and they're not being rational. And so we've had to have a lot of conversations about why you're exercising cowardice right now. And you're deliberate in making that choice instead of exercising bravery. And you can deliberately make that choice. So if you're going to make a choice, make a choice to be brave.
Totally. That's funny. It's reminds you of the quote. If you guys have you uploaded the promo video from the last Maine event to the YouTube channel? Or are you
not to the YouTube channel yet? I will, but not to the YouTube channel. It's on Instagram and Facebook.
Oh, you guys have probably been seeing it float around social media, but you were quoted in the scene where we're zooming up on the mats, right? And you're quoted in saying, sometimes, I don't want to slaughter it, but sometimes it's the thing that's uncomfortable. It's a conversation that we don't want to have. Is sometimes all that we need to know is all that is needed to know that that's probably what we should be doing. Right.
Yeah. The only thing I did cringe a little on that because I used the word sometimes. It's not even sometimes. It's always. Yeah. Always. Whenever you're afraid of something, that's the thing that you should do, except barring,
there's your sometimes.
You guys understand right? Because if you're standing on the edge of a cliff and you're afraid of falling off the cliff, I would not suggest jumping off the cliff.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, that's where discernment comes in. That's what we talked about earlier. But if you're afraid of going to speak in public, you should speak in public. If you're afraid of writing a book, you should write a book. If you're afraid of having that conversation with your wife, that's the conversation with your wife you need to have. Kip, there's another thing about that video. I'm glad you brought that up. That initially I was like, oh, it hurt my ego. What? Do you know what it was? Any guesses?
No. That hurt your ego?
Hurt my ego. Who is the first person to be quoted in that video?
Why would that hurt your ego?
No, who is it? Answer that question first.
Well, see, now I don't want to be humble.
It's you.
Yeah, I think it's me.
It's you.
Yeah. I don't know when I said that though. I was like, oh, interesting. But it's a good way to start that off.
I remember when you said it.
It's a powerful statement.
Well, we were talking, you were speaking, and I can't remember exactly what we're talking about, but you were talking about in front of all the guys about, hey, what's the purpose? What's the mission? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And so you were the first person to speak. And I was like, oh man, I should being the keyword. This is
Yeah.
my video. This is my organization. This is my movement. I should be the first person talking. And so my knee jerk reaction was like, oh, well, like, how come I'm not speaking first? But then I thought, no, actually, that's the correct way to lead it off. That's the exact thing that needed to be said. And Todd did a great job with that. Even though I was like, oh, my fragile ego, like, oh, I should be speaking. But it was you. And you said what needed to be said. And shame on me if I let my fragile ego get in the way of a video that could potentially impact thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives because of what they hear, how they hear it, or what they see and what they perceive. But God, man, we do it all, like we're talking about
So
not letting your
natural to
ego
do
get in the
it.
way. And still
Yeah.
we let our ego get in the way.
Yeah. And it goes back to what you're saying earlier, right? It's just like keeping the mission ahead of us, right? It's like, what's the intent?
Exactly.
What? Yeah. And it's hard. I mean, I'm the same way. Like we're doing that Utah meetup this Friday. And Mike Schaefer reached out to me and said, hey, Kip, I know you're busy. So let me run, right? Let me run with this. And I'll be honest, a little bit of the same thing, right? I'm kind of like, well, Mike, this is, this is my state, like
thing.
this is my thing. Right. And I'll be honest, like, it's been a little bit like, you know what? This is great. Like he should run with it. And, but same thing, a little bit of that ego is like hopping in a little bit thinking like I should be, doing it. So I don't know. All right.
It really comes down to the question. Yeah, we should here in a second. Let me just say one more thing. It really comes down to the difference between selfless and being selfish, right? Because if you're selfish, it's my thing. It's my state. It's it's me. It's
ours versus ours
versus ours. It's our thing. It's our movement. It's serving everybody. And selflessness is embracing of everybody, right? It's better. And I used to believe, and a bunch of guys are listening to this right now. Guys, check yourself. If you ever say, well, if you want it done right, you have to do it yourself. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
How could you be good at everything? There is one thing that you're good at. I don't know what it is. For example, for me, I'm fairly decent at having a conversation with other guests. I'm fairly decent at that.
Yeah.
And that's what I should be doing. Am I good at logistics? No. So why would I do that? Am I good at planning? No. Am I good at all these other? No. The answer is no. And I have to be truthful about that because the mission is more important than my fragile ego. And I see a lot of men's movements that all focus and center around a singular figure at the top. It's like a pyramid, right? This guy's at the top and everything is from him. That's cult-like.
Yeah.
And I don't want to create that. I want to create a movement with millions and millions of men across the planet that all feel empowered to go out and lead their lives, lead other men, lead their families, lead their community members, lead their businesses and their employees and their employers. If I make myself the central figurehead of the Order of Man movement, then how limiting is that? Like, you have to listen to me for directive? No, I want to empower you. It's like Jocko says when he talks about the rules of the battlefield, decentralized command. I give you express authority and implied authority to go out and lead your own lives. You don't need to listen to my directive. You do what's right. Sometimes that's in alignment with what we say, and sometimes it isn't. But I trust that you can lead your family. You've been called to lead your family.
Totally.
So lead it.
Yeah. I was reading a book last night. Super cool. You love this. So they did a study, and this is paraphrasing it, but they did these studies where they had raw materials like macaroni noodles and marshmallows and tape or whatever. And a group of individuals is supposed to build a tower as high as they could using these raw materials. And they had different groups in the study, like MBA grads, grad students, some engineers, some lawyers, like all these different groups. And then they also had kindergartners. The kindergartners were more effective in building a small tower than all the adults.
Really?
Yeah. And the whole point of this study was finding that because adults in based upon what we're saying, egos, the minute they start working together, they're identifying pecking order. They're worried about who's in charge and who's not in charge, and how do they show up, and what are the other people thinking, and and they're dealing with this whole social awareness problem and egos and everything else, and not the actual issue. And the whole point here was that it wasn't safety to just be effective. These kindergartners, it's
I don't
safe
care about that.
they
They
can
want
do
to build the
whatever,
tower.
right? They're just like having fun and they're not worried about whatever, and they're more effective at it. And you could see how we show up in organizations, how we might show up in our homes, how we might show up in the IC and other areas where if that safety doesn't exist, and we're worried about walking on eggshells and offending people, or we're focused on protecting our ego, and all this efficiency, man, just gets lost. And all this energy is wasted on all of that BS. That's not really the desired outcome or the mission. It's just noise that gets in the way. So
my wife years ago had a very interesting experience. So my wife has been she's not anymore, but for a long time she was in Rotary, and she very, very much enjoyed it. She was I think they call it I can't remember the name, but like a Paul, I can't remember Paul Harris or something, whoever maybe established Rotary. Anyway, she was a fellow, like a Rotary fellow, which is like a lifelong achievement. Like she achieved that, and so she was very active, involved in it. Well, she went to school, and one of the members of the Rotary was one of her, we'll just say educators, And she told me the story. She said one day I called him Mr. So-and-so, and he stopped and he corrected her and said, "I'm Dr. So-and-so. I didn't go to 4 years of education, so you call me Mr. So-and-so." And I thought, I'm like, well, you went to 4 years so people could call you doctor? What a fucking dumbass you are.
What an idiot.
Like, you spent $150,000, $200,000 so somebody could call you doctor. Your arrogance is like getting in your own way, you freaking moron. But I'm telling you, like, ego, man, it's just a fascinating, interesting thing. And none of us can escape it fully. All we can hope to do is fight against it. It's crazy to me.
Screw things up.
You really that's what you're running around hoping one of your students 3 or 4 years ago is calling you doctor. You spent $200,000+ so somebody could call you doctor. You're a moron. And then I think, well, I'm kind of a moron too, because I do the same thing when it comes to my ego and what I want people to view and perceive me as.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, man. Well, we got a half an hour for questions. So at this point, let's just do like rapid fire or whatever we need to do.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Let's just jump down to some good ones. I flagged some of these and I thought they were pretty profound. So my apologies. Hold on a second. Yeah, way to waste more time here, Kip. Jeez.
Should have been ready, bro.
Yeah, I like this question. All right. Aiden Finn Picton. I'm sure I've listened to so much of the podcast, so I'm sorry if I somehow missed this being answered before, if it has been. But the Christian denomination you chose, I always wondered how you chose and what really drew you to it. I've heard you, Ryan, say that you felt drawn to it or sounded as if you just felt called and went for it, if I remember correctly. But I do second guess myself a lot. I'm feeling very drawn to evangelicalism after I found at least my local evangelical church turned out to be really shady and dishonest. I'm considering different churches after being totally disconnected for a long while. If you have any advice on picking a new church, as I want to make a rational and biblical sound decision, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts.
So I don't want to make this question about church. Actually, I want to broaden this out a little bit. And I think really what we need to determine for ourselves, and it's important to know yourself, is what type of individual you are and what kind of thinker you are and decision maker you are. So for me, and Kip, you tell me what you are, but I'm a very intuitive decision maker. So for me, if it feels good, if it feels right, that's all I need. I don't need proof. I don't need all the documentation. I don't need all the studies and the history and all this kind of stuff on it. To me, intuitiveness, it feels good. I wish I could explain that more than I can, but I can't because that's my personality. It
Yeah.
feels right. Go. Yeah, that sounds good. Go. Are you intuitive or are you more of maybe deliberate? I don't know what word I would use, but
Yeah,
deliberate,
I'm a little bit
intentional
more.
thinker.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more logical about it, but it's nice because every so often I'll get the gut check, that goes, you know what? Yeah. Like I have to remind myself that it's not a logical thing and that spirituality and faith is not logical. And if it is, by the way, I'm going to get my world rocked if I'm relying on logic to kind of determine my belief system. So I find it as a fault. By default, I'm logical about it. I have to like intentionally remind myself that faith is not a logical thing.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's good advice. Like I think about situations, even outside of the church, because again, I don't want to make this just a church conversation because I think it can
Yeah.
relate to more people. Um, I feel things very well. I'm a great feeler that way.
Yeah.
I think this sounds funny. I think I'm actually more feminine in this way when it comes to my intuitive nature. I'm very in tune with the way I feel about things. Even the conversations I have with my wife are sometimes a little juxtaposed to what you would think about the quintessential relationship between a husband and a wife, and who's the feeler and who's the not, and who's the talker and who needs to
Yeah.
work through things emotionally. I tend to be that person. And so I might be in a situation where I can't describe what it is, but I feel like it's just not a great environment for me to be in. And I have learned because of my personality that I need to listen to that.
Yeah.
I put myself in compromising situations because I've tried to turn that off. And then I've gotten myself out of compromising situations because I've been in tune with that. So what I think you need to do is really determine what kind of person you are. You probably already know. And the way that you're talking is that you're more of a deliberate, intentional, maybe thinker. And so what you need to ask yourself, I can't give you the answer to this, but what you need to ask yourself is, what information do I need to make this decision? And then
Yeah.
once you get it, you need to have faith that you got the information that you need. You don't need to second guess yourself. As it would go is, let your yeses be yeses and your no's be no's. Determine what information you need, collect the information that you feel comfortable with, and then make your decision and let the chips fall where they may. Trust
Yeah.
yourself.
Totally.
Trust your personality. Trust who you are intuitively, whether it's like I said, intuitive person or more of a deliberate or intentional person. Trust it. You're built that way for a reason. And I
Yeah.
think God has blessed us with that. And it's our job to figure out what our gifts and talents and abilities are, and then to use them and harness them for productive outcomes for ourselves and the people that we have responsibility for. I can't tell
Totally.
you what it is. I don't know. I don't know your
Yeah.
personality. I just know mine.
One thing that came to mind that Aiden said, he talked about how like his local evangelical church like found out some dishonesty, right, and some stuff. And I mean, I get that, right? Like it would bother me too, right, to be part of an org that there's some dishonesty happening, but it just draws out, I think, the importance of your individual spiritual relationship with God and not reliant on the group, right? And I just can't stress that enough. I think every church, I think we fall into this, right? That it's like, oh, okay, well, well, I think we muddy the water of culture and social groups and gospel. And sometimes I think we're a little bit maybe lazy around identifying our own spiritualness and our own personal belief, agnostic of the group, agnostic of leaders or whatever else. And so I want to stress out like how important I think it is that you have your own personal relationship and not just always reliant on where you're going to church.
Well, the other thing you need to consider is that all men are flawed. So
Yeah,
there's going to be dishonesty wherever you go. And does that mean the church or congregation is wrong? Does that mean the message is wrong? No, it means the
totally.
deliverer was wrong because he's a human being and he makes mistakes just like you do. Now, that said, there are some mistakes and indiscretion that should not be overlooked, right? If
Totally.
your congregation is completely corrupt, then I would say, okay, well, the tree is rotten, therefore the fruit will be rotten. But if there's minor indiscretions or things like this that are happening and you feel like there might be some dishonesty, I'm not saying overlook it, but just take that into consideration that all men are flawed. That doesn't inevitably mean that the doctrine or the message is flawed. You have to determine that for yourself. I don't know what you're talking about or what you're referring to. So for me, if it was something that was significant that couldn't be overlooked, then yes, I would be working towards finding a new congregation that more embodied the message. But if these are minor things, and again, this comes down to who you are, because sometimes certain people have the ability to really blow things out of proportion. I don't know if that's you, but there are some people who really do. And you have to ask yourself if that's you. Do you blow things out of proportion? Or are you a rational person about it? And if that's the case, then maybe you're onto something. But this really comes down to knowing yourself more than it does knowing what church you belong to.
Yeah. All right, Kevin Green, quick question. How do you forgive yourself?
You learn from your indiscretion and then you apply it. That's it. That's it. We all make, I just said it a minute ago. We all make mistakes. We all mess up. There's things I'm embarrassed about and things that I regret, of course. But I don't dwell on those things because I look at those as a learning opportunity that I would not be the same individual if I did not have those learning moments and opportunities. Look, I think it's easier to feel guilty about something if you haven't taken the lesson that you should have taken and applied it. It's significantly harder to feel guilty about it when you say, you know what, here's what I did. And you admit it, you own it, you got to own it. And here's what I learned, and here's what I'm going to do. And then you apply it. So that's a 4-step formula, right? Own it. This is like the repentance process. If we're talking about from a doctor, from a gospel perspective, own it, acknowledge it, recognize that you did it. Okay. Learn from it, figure out what you're going to do moving forward, right the wrong. That's also another thing. You know, you got to right the wrong. If you messed up with somebody, maybe it's just an apology. Maybe it's paying them because you stole from them financially, whatever, right the wrong, and then vow to create different patterns and behaviors moving forward. That's the repentance process. And if you're not spiritual, then that's the maturity process. If you'd rather
it's the learning process. Yeah. Growth process. Yeah.
So what was the exact verbiage?
How do you forgive yourself? Yeah.
Yeah. That's how you do it. Yeah. And you offer yourself some grace. You just recognize that you're flawed and you're going to mess up. And here's what I'm going to do in spite of me messing up.
Yeah. And I think the answer, if the question was different, is how do you get over bad decisions of your past and not regret them anymore? Same answer. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the beauty of the universality of what we're talking about, is whether you're spiritual or not, or this or that. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter your culture, your belief, your background. It's all principles, and principles apply universally. So you actually need to go through the repentance process, is what I would say. From a non-spiritual perspective, you need to go through, like you said, Kip, the learning process, but it's all the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Miss Capital Alphabet T. How do you stay focused?
Wait. Hold up.
I couldn't pronounce the last name. You want to try?
Okay. No, I was like, wait.
And it's not Mrs. It's MIS. So.
Okay. Miss
Tias. Miss Tias.
Okay. All right.
This is the drawback of having a global impact here on the Order of Man podcast, is we start getting some tough names in here.
Wait, why do you assume that's global? Is that...
Oh boy,
that's elitist. That's nationalism, Kip.
Okay.
I don't understand why you would just go straight to that person's from a different country.
Is that what's not racist? What is that? What would that be?
It's a nationalist attitude, and frankly, I'm offended. Attitude? I'm insulted. Okay. It's by your
amount of Americanism pisses me off.
I don't even know. I can't even say it because it just doesn't resonate with me. I'm trying to think of ways to be offended and I can't. So go.
You're trying to talk like Brian Mitchler.
That's right. And I'm having a very hard time doing it.
Okay. How do you stay focused and determined when it seems like you're in the middle of a financial rough patch? Backstory: wife and I caught COVID in early August. We were out of work for approximately 20 days. I'm self-employed and my main income comes from platforms such as Amazon and eBay. During those 20 days, I was unable to ship, sales, inventory, etc. I drive Grubhub 6 to 7 nights a week and try to make up for the loss of income as I'm dedicated days to try to revive my business. We are at the end of November and still I'm trying to catch up.
What was the first question though?
How do I stay focused and determined when it seems like I'm just stuck in this financial rough patch?
You consider the alternative, which is to be unfocused and distracted. And is that going to help you?
Nope.
So what alternative?
It's going to be worse. Yeah.
Get after it. Look, I know it's hard. I know people are struggling. I know there's people who've gone through hard times, especially in the last couple of years. And like, that's the hand you were dealt. You know, if you've ever played cards, you know, like you can't just like change the cards. Like, oh, I don't like this hand. Can I trade? No, you can't. No, you cannot. You can swap out some cards. You can play your hand a little differently, but you don't get to just exchange your hand because you don't like it. That's the hand you were dealt with. So deal with it. I think there's a lot of people who believe that you can just change things or you're entitled to something or it should be better. Should's a problem. That's a bad word. And that it should be better for you or you don't deserve this. Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Whether you should or shouldn't, you got it. Yeah.
What's done is done.
Yeah.
So like, damn. But here's one way I look at it. What a cool opportunity you have. You think about the best movie you've ever seen. Think about a couple of movies that stand out to me.
What is your favorite? What is your favorite movie?
Braveheart. Braveheart's my favorite movie. Think about Braveheart. Think about the hand that young William Wallace was dealt. You know, did he ask for that? Did he deserve that? No, he didn't ask for it. He didn't deserve it. That's what he got. And what did he do? He made the best of it.
Rised up.
Right? You think about another one that I really like is Gladiator.
Yeah, that's a fun movie.
Maximus lifts himself from obscurity, you know, just a poor family and becomes a great Roman general. And then he falls from grace and then he builds himself back up. Like, why do we as men like those stories? Because they're stories of redemption, because we acknowledge that we are those characters. We are William Wallace. We are Maximus. We have fallen from grace. All of us have. And we're peasants. We're peons. We're lowly little men. And we like those because we see those men rising up in the face of challenge and adversity and extreme odds. And they conquer they conduct themselves like men in the wake of them falling from grace. Okay, well, you've fallen from grace, not by your own accord. You know, sometimes, yeah, for sure. Sometimes we do dumb things that cause those problems, but sometimes you have a reaction to a COVID that creates some situations that are less than favorable for you. And what are you going to do? You're going to rewind the clock and like change things? No, it's what's done is done. So lift yourself up out of obscurity and consider it a challenge and consider it a great blessing and consider how maybe you're going to be better than you were before because you're going to learn some things along the path that are going to help you the next time a pandemic comes around, or the next time you get laid off, or the next time somebody in your life dies, or the next time you deal with a medical condition, or the next time you lose one of your best clients. That's pretty empowering to me. That sounds awesome. And that's motivating. That's inspiring. Oh, here I am, this guy who has no right at all to be able to create something, for example, like we've created today. And yet here we are, and we've created it. What right do I have? No right other than we created it. And tomorrow somebody might say, or technology might come around, or something might happen that says, we're going to wipe this out. Order of man, gone tomorrow. No more, you're going to close all my social media accounts, no more website. Do I shit on myself and do I just wallow in my own despair, or do I take what I've learned and then rise out of obscurity and make myself greater than I was before? What an amazing opportunity and challenge. So you got to decide, you know, how do you stay focused? You just stay focused. I don't know what more to say than you're looking at it as a negative. I'm looking at it as a positive. You get to recreate yourself. How awesome is that?
Yeah. I mean, I think what you alluded to earlier is like, just stop giving power to the concept of it shouldn't be this way.
Right. It
Because
is.
it really stops us from dealing in reality, right?
Mhm.
When we run that story, it's like, oh, and by the way, this isn't just this use case, right? It's like, oh, well, my marriage shouldn't be this tough. I shouldn't have to deal with this at work. It shouldn't, family shouldn't be this way, or my parents shouldn't have been this way. All the more we hold on to that concept of way things should or should have haven't been, you're pausing and going, oh, I'm going to just hang out here in this area of blaming of or and being a victim of my circumstances versus going, well, but guess what? They are. So now what are you going to do with it? And just
Mhm.
accept it for the way it is. At least that's how it works for me. I think if I hang out in that should and shouldn't be area, it almost prevents a mental block from dealing in reality.
Well, it's just backwards thinking.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be this way. So all you're doing is you're looking at your conditions, what's happened in the past, and that's it. Like, how are you going to propel? How are you going to go forward? If you're looking, how are you going to drive a car, for example, if you're looking in the rearview mirror?
Yeah.
Like, you're going to
Totally.
run into something. So, like, just rip the rearview mirror off. Like, I don't need that. I'm not going that way. Rip it off. Say, okay, well, like, here are the current conditions. Here is where I am. Here's where I want to go. Go. Figure out a strategy, move forward, stay focused, rip the rearview mirror off, and get after it.
Justin Schmidt, will you be having any events for dads and daughters up there in Maine?
Yes, we will. Is this a real question, Kip? Or are you just
It
trying to
is a
plug
real
something here?
question. I do
Um,
admit I purposely made sure I read it.
yeah, we do have one. Hold on. I'm trying to find the dates here. I don't know. We got one coming up.
Go to
It's in
orderman.com. Do you have an events page on there, or do they need to know the
no.
event URL?
The best thing to do is to sign up for our emails and to join us on the socials, because that's where I make it available. But yeah, we do have an
Okay.
event for fathers and daughters, and that will be coming up very soon. We'll be announcing the dates very soon. So make sure you sign up for emails at orderofman.com, and make sure you're following at Ryan Mickler on the socials, and we'll get that information to you.
Cool. There you go, Justin. All right. PJ Villela. My wife and I have a good relationship as a whole, but there are definitely areas of struggle. One major one is that we have been in a constant rut for the past years in a lackluster sex relationship. From conversations with her, she just has very little drive after we got married when we were 21. After so many times of being rejected physically, I start to lose the desire for her in other areas of our relationship, and I tend to get more focused with work or hobbies. This obviously leads to her not wanting to even more. So my question is this: any tips on how to kickstart enjoying your wife again when you don't really enjoy her currently, other than going on weekly dates? Have been doing that for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, weekly dates are fine, and that's important. You should be doing that. But I think we need to get to the root of what's going on with the sex drive. It could be just the fact that you guys are both getting older. You also got to look into your health. Are you guys healthy? Is she healthy? Because if she's not healthy and she's a little overweight and she's not working out, she's not training, then that's going to affect. If she's not eating right, that's going to affect sex drive, not just for her, but for you also.
Yeah.
So for those of you
Because if she
guys,
doesn't feel sexy, even, right?
or she doesn't have the energy because she's
Yeah.
tired and exhausted at the end of every day because she's 50 pounds overweight. And I'm not picking on women. Like, the same goes for us too, guys.
Yeah.
If you're 50, 60, 70 pounds overweight and you're drinking, and like, your sex drive is going to go down, no doubt. So you need to make sure you shore that area up. Like, get the fitness stuff dialed in. I would also add spontaneity, because sometimes we get into these monotonous grinds of life and marriage where, with 4 kids, for example, my own marriage tends to be monotonous at times because my wife's homeschooling and I'm doing the work. And then we have these activities, and then we have these sports, and we have this thing and this going on. And that leaves very little room for us. So spontaneity is a very important thing. If, for example, with date night, because you said you're doing this regularly, even mix that up. What are you guys doing for date night? Are you just going to the movie and having dinner? Maybe go to a new place, go to a new restaurant,
Yeah.
maybe get a hotel room for the evening. Go out of town if you can. If she's typically the one who's scheduling the dates, why don't you schedule the dates? You pick what you're doing. You get the babysitter. You make sure the kids are all taken care of. Whatever you can do to mix that up, because date nights are good, but you need to make sure that you're mixing that up, because that spontaneity is going to be very, very important. So I say between those two things, health and spontaneity, and also, by the way, not pointing fingers at her health, making sure that you get your health dialed in. Because look, if you're a guy who's 15% body fat and you're lean and you're attractive and you're doing what's right, I don't know that she's going to be able to keep her hands off of you. And isn't that what you want? So what can you do to improve your own well-being and your own performance? And I think that will go a long way also in ensuring that she sees what you're doing as attracted to that.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you said the relationship's fine. Sometimes I think we might be coasting in the relationship and we think it's fine because we're not fighting, but maybe you guys aren't connecting like you should. And that does make it changes things. So I would question or challenge to make sure that the relationship is not okay, that the relationship is awesome and you're feeling great about each other and you're connecting really well and everything else. And you're ambitious and you're getting after it and you have things you're working on together. Like, don't make it okay. Okay is not good enough. Not fighting is not good enough. I think just make sure that it's a really strong relationship, and that might help too.
Yeah. Well, and also along those same lines is looking for distractions in the relationship, because it's very easy to get distracted with work and kids and sports and projects and this and that. And then it detracts from us being able to be present and have a real conversation. My wife and I went on a date last night. We had a sitter come over and take care of the kids, and we went on a date last night. And, we were free from distractions. We were able to have some conversations that we can't have in front of the kids, obviously. We talked about Christmas and we talked about events and we talked about what 2022 is going to hold, but we created that environment. And most of the time we don't have those environments because we have so many distractions, and it's just hard enough to get through those distractions, let alone have any sort of significant connection.
Yeah. Freaking kids.
Damn
All right.
kids.
Raymond Valdez. Ryan used to conclude your interview podcast with the question, what is the definition of a man to you? And you don't do it anymore. What's up?
Mm-hmm. It's a crutch. That's what it is. If you're asking the same question over and over again, it's a crutch. So I'm a professional conversationalist. Professional conversationalists don't ask regurgitated, scripted questions. They just don't do it. That's an important question. What makes a man a man? What I'm trying to make a conscious effort of is weaving that into the discussion. So if you listen with a closed ear, you're going to hear it, because they're going to describe and articulate and talk about what makes them a man, woven into the conversation organically. When I started podcasting 6-7 years ago, I started with like 8 to 10 questions, and I would literally have them typed out. I would print them up and I would go through question and question. What I realized is I was doing my guest a disservice because I wasn't intuitive to their responses. And I was doing the listener a disservice because I was just regurgitating that same old boring question over and over again. And so I don't feel like I was respecting you as a listener, and I wasn't respecting my guest as a guest of the podcast. So I made that conscious decision years and years ago to move away from scripted questions, but I left that one question. But I thought to myself a couple of years ago, like, if I really believe that you shouldn't have scripted questions, that you should be organic and intuitive with the conversations, then why do I have this last question remaining? So yeah, it's going to require you to think a little bit more. It's not the scripted answer. To ask that question to me is a very 2022, 2021 type thing to do. Make it so easy on everybody that they can't possibly misinterpret. But I'm interested in deeper conversations, not just getting the answers to the 10 questions that I send you a week ahead of time, our conversation or our interview. So that's why I make that decision. But it's still there. The answer is still there. You got to listen a little bit more attentively for it.
Copy. Chris Babber. When neither of you find yourselves straying from the path, how do you realign?
When say it again, when either of you find yourself straying from the path?
Yes, sir.
You go back to your battle plan. It's right here. Mine's right here. If you don't have, like, if you don't know where you're going, then you don't know if you're straying.
And you back to the battle plan to say, hey, you know what? This is my commitment on objectives and tactics, or back to the battle plan of, hey, you know what? What's my vision? What's my purpose? And what's this,
Yeah,
the bigger
there's
game?
value in all, and you really
Yeah.
have to determine what it is you're missing in your life. So if you're dealing with motivation issues,
Mm.
then I would say go back to the vision, because I think that's going to help inspire you. If you're dealing with not knowing what to do, like you're feeling lost, I don't know what to do, then I would say go back to your
Go back to the
tactics.
plan. Yeah. Go back to the
Right.
plan. Yeah.
Right. And the plan, sometimes the plan is boring, and that's the hard part. Like,
Yeah.
how do you run a marathon? Well, you run one step for
Yeah.
like 10,000 times or whatever it comes out to, right?
Yeah.
Like it's probably more than that, but that's how you run a marathon. Is how do you get from point A to point B? You put one foot in front of the other about 2 yards away from your previous foot, and you do it 20, 30, 40,000 times. That's the answer. But around step 10,000, you're like, this sucks. Yeah, it does.
Stick to the plan.
Totally sucks. Right. But the answer doesn't change just because it sucks.
Yeah.
You got to go back to your why, which I want to complete the marathon because I want to be proud of myself. I want to prove that I can do this. I want to make my children proud of me. I want to be an example to other people around. There's all sorts of reasons it could be. That's the motive. Go to that. And then what's the action step for the motive? One step, 2-3 yards at a time, over 40,000 steps. Again, whatever I don't know what the calculation comes to,
Yeah.
but whatever it is, right? You get it. So remind me what the question was again, just so I get the verbiage right and make sure I hit on it.
Strain from the path. How do you realign?
Yeah. Just figure out what path you're on, and get back after it. Like it's easy to get off the path. It's easy to get distracted. It's easy to see the bright, shiny object and want to move on to something else. But you got to determine and ask yourself, is that really what I want? A lot of the times you're going to find out that no, it isn't what you want. So figure out what you want. And if you haven't done that, that's a good first exercise. And then reverse engineer it back into daily steps that you can do. For example, writing a book. I've told you I'm writing a book right now. Writing isn't like the most enjoyable thing to me. I'd much rather do a podcast. I'd much rather be on video or behind a microphone. And so there's days where I'm like, this sucks. And you know what? Does that mean I don't do it? No, it just means you do it and it sucks, period. Like I don't attach any sort of weird meaning to it.
Yeah.
Like it just sucks. But writing a book is important. And even writing a book isn't all that important to me. What is important is getting the message out and helping tens, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of men with a message that I think is going to serve them in their best interest. And that means that I got to write 1,000 words today, whether I want to or not. That's what it means. And so my plan is very integrated, is what I would call it.
Yeah.
Goal, objective, desire, actually goes before that. Vision for myself, goals and objectives that I want to accomplish, tactics that are going to allow me to get there, checkpoints to make sure I'm on the right path. The end. I know I'll produce what I want.
Yeah. And so many people don't succeed, not because of the plan, but because they stop executing on the plan because it's not exciting.
Yeah. And you know what's funny about that, Kip, is that a lot of people, myself included, will see the results and they'll still deviate.
Yeah. It's
like,
almost
I
like,
know I've done this when
a quicker win somewhere else. Like, I don't know what it is. It's weird.
It's just our attention span is greatly diminished. So I'll do like, I'll say to myself, I really want to lose 15 pounds. And for a week, I'll be really, really good. I'm like, cool. I'm down like 6 pounds.
Yeah.
So
you have motivation,
like
you're making progress. Now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, I guess I'll have like the chips and salsa. I can take it easy. It's like, no. like, keep going.
Yeah.
We deviate way too soon. Just keep going. Be in it forever. That's another strategy. Is a lot of people are in it for the short term. Like I want the 90-day beach body. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, who doesn't want that? but can you have the 90-year beach body? Like that to me is a greater way of doing it.
Yeah. That's why I like Aubrey Marcus's book. When you had him on, I think he talked about his book, like Own the Day. And I like that concept. There's sometimes like there's no tomorrow, that you can't change yesterday, but you got today. Right. And it's just like, if you just win every day, just own the day, work your plan and just do it every day, like you'll get there, but we kind of have to trust that plan. So
it's like in math, the lowest common denominator, right? When you're trying to add fractions, you need to find, or do anything with fractions, you need to find that lowest common denominator before you can make those calculations. Well, that's true with your life. But we dismiss it too. Like you think about it, for example, maybe you have a goal to wake up at 6 o'clock and do a workout. And so you do it for a couple of times and then you're like, oh, that's not that big a deal. No, it is a big deal, actually. Like you getting up out of bed before your natural man wants you to, that's a big deal. Yeah. Treat it like that. You don't have to go shout it from the rooftops, but like honor the fact that you got out of bed. Honor the fact that the first thing you did this morning was not jump on your phone and instead you got a drink of water and then you went to the gym. Honor that. Again, you don't have to make it into some grand celebration or make yourself into something you're not, but like you should be proud of that. And then today, you've got 10 things. Guys, look, how it feels when you get all 10 things done versus how you feel when you get 2. I don't need to explain that to you. So go do your 10 things today. And then when you're done, go play baseball with your kids. And then when you're done, go have dinner. And then when you're done, go have sex with your wife. That's a pretty good day. And you should honor that. Like you should be proud of that. You should celebrate. Don't dismiss that. And it's easy to do, especially in the wake of social media, because you're like, well, I got up out of bed. I went and worked out. I did my work. I had dinner with my family. I had sex with my wife. But like that guy over there, he's in Dubai right now.
He had sex in his Lamborghini, man.
With 3 women. And here I am having sex with my wife, and we've been together for 10 years.
In the back of the old Ford. Man, my life sucks.
That's right. So just get away from that comparison trap and realize, actually, the comparison trap's not bad, but you should compare to who you were. Yesterday I didn't get to have sex with my wife. Yesterday I didn't spend time with my kids. Yesterday I only got 3 things done, but today I got 10. So damn, I'm doing pretty good. And that's what you should be comparing yourself to.
Yeah, for sure. That's funny. I got a gem, man. All right. Brother. So we'll wrap up. To learn more about the Iron Council, we're going to open that up in a couple of days for the entire month of December, Mr.
Tomorrow for a couple of weeks, December 1st through the 15th. That will be open. Okay. So you guys got to get registered tomorrow through the 15th.
Okay. So you got to act on that. That's orderofman.com/Iron Council. And then to join us on Facebook, go to facebook.com/group/orderman. And the last thing really is sign up for the newsletter by going to orderman.com for updates on future events, whatever. If you guys have not seen the, I guess, what would I call it? A recap promo video for the main event earlier this year. It was pretty epic awesome video.
There's another one coming too. So we'll make that available on YouTube. So
Todd, right? Todd did the video.
Yeah,
he did awesome. That was great. Yeah. So, and then of course, connect with Mr. Michler on the socials at Ryan Michler. That's Michler, both Insta and Twitter.
Excellent. All right, guys. Well, I think you have your marching orders. Get up, go work out, do your work, play baseball with your kids, have dinner, have sex with your wife, and then we will see you guys on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, become the man you are meant to be.